Have you ever experienced betrayal? I hope not. It's a terrible feeling that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Unfortunately, I've personally dealt with this, and it wouldn't be so bad if it were just a minor mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, but what happened in my life and how my closest people deceived me, that's something else entirely. I assure you, everyone involved will deeply regret it. This is my story, take a look. I'm Mark, a pretty attractive and smart guy, or at least I think so, and I have good self-confidence. I work as a programmer in a commercial company, and the amazing part is I only need to work 50 minutes a week to earn a decent amount of money. But that doesn't mean I'm lazy the rest of the time. I'm always learning and developing myself. I've read lots of motivational books, watched interviews with successful people, and lifted myself out of poverty. So I value everything I have and I'm grateful for it every day. But perhaps the best thing in my life is my wife, Sarah, who's 4 years younger than me. She's 25 and I'm 29. She's a model doing various advertising campaigns with a big following on social media, and she really enjoys her life. Sarah has a fit, tanned body, toned thighs, and a great bust. But she wasn't always like that. Her life changed a lot after meeting me. When we met, she was just a cashier with no ambitions or goals, but I saw something special in her and helped her realize it. Even back then, I had a good job, and though I didn't earn as much as I do now, I could afford a lot. I convinced Sarah to quit her cashier job, and I found her a great producer who helped her succeed on social media. Now, with our combined incomes, we live a luxurious life. It might sound like a success story, but then reality hit me hard. I have 2 buddies from school, Tom and Eric, who stuck with me for a while. When we turned 18, we tried starting our own business with an ice cream stand, but it flopped pretty fast. Then, 6 months later, we tried again with a hot dog stand, but that didn't last long either. We made a few more attempts after that, but they all failed. When I turned 21, I realized I needed a change, so I got into the IT field, even though it was new to me because I knew it had potential. My friends didn't think it was a good idea. They said, "You're wasting your time. You should focus on real stuff, create your own thing instead of working for someone else." But I disagreed. I saw the long-term benefits of becoming skilled in IT, and it paid off. Tom and Eric kept trying to start businesses. Now they've got one fast food stand that's been doing okay for 3 years, but the profits are small, and they split it between them. They are stuck in their ways, while I've been able to travel, buy nice things, and have a wife who's a model. They still live in the bustling city, dealing with the pressures of daily life. I hold no grudge against them for opting out of hanging with me. It was their call, and I respect that. Now, our bond isn't what it used to be, but we still keep in touch. They swing by my spot on weekends, kick back on my sleek leather couch, and we dive into video games and chit-chat about the usual stuff. Despite our contrast, we've managed to keep our friendship alive, mostly catching up at my pad. They dug my fancy digs, but little did I realize, my wife was also a draw for them. Meeting up with Tom and Eric was a refreshing break for me. They were regular guys, no fancy degrees, and I appreciated that I could just chill with them, have a brew, and shoot the breeze without any airs. I didn't feel the need to flaunt anything in front of them. Instead, I aimed to be relatable and keep it real. Sarah didn't mind me spending a few nights a week with the guys. She had her own circle of friends and often hung out with them. Sarah and I were big on hospitality, so our place was always buzzing with company. One evening, as I headed home, my neighbor Jimmy, a director, flagged me down. He wanted to chat, assuring me he wasn't prying, but he noticed something odd: a Ford often parked near my place when I wasn't around. He even snapped a pic. I appeared at his phone and saw a white Ford, my buddy Tom's ride. "Thanks, Mr. Jefferson." "I'll check it out," I said. Jimmy then asked a favor, to keep an eye on his house when I'm around and let him know if I spot the car. "Sure thing." "Good night," I replied. "Thanks a lot." "Good night." This was a major concern. Why was my friend visiting my wife during work hours? With that question gnawing at me, I stepped into the house, where Sarah, clad in a white robe, greeted me. Without a word, she ushered me in, unveiling a surprise. "Darling, welcome home." "Pull this string," she said. I obliged, revealing a stunning sight. Sarah had bought a seductive nurse's costume. "You seem tired, but I have just the cure. First, hit the showers, then meet me in my clinic," Sarah instructed. I hurriedly showered, and Sarah and I shared an unforgettable night. The spontaneity swept away all my worries, and I surrendered to the moment entirely. The next day, with nowhere to rush off to, Sarah and I were set to spend the whole day together. I tried to convince myself that Tom must have swung by yesterday to grab something he forgot and left in a hurry. I didn't want to entertain the thought of Sarah cheating on me, especially with my pal. We had a typical day together, planning to unwind with a movie in the evening, but Eric interrupted our plans, suggesting we hit a club. "Come on, it'll be a blast. Bring Sarah," he urged. I declined, not only because we had other plans but also because I wasn't keen on clubbing, especially dragging Sarah along when Tom and Eric didn't have partners. Tom had tried settling down, even tied the knot, but ended up cheating on his wife, leading to a split. Eric, on the other hand, had a string of short-lived relationships, the longest lasting only a year. I'd always advised them to find girlfriends if they wanted to hit the town together. They just nod and assure me they'd find someone soon. I shared Eric's invitation with Sarah and sensed her disappointment. It seemed she wanted to go out and have some fun, but I brushed it off. The next day, off to work I went after kissing Sarah goodbye. At noon, Jimmy, my neighbor, called in. "Mark, a car is parked near your place again. Not sure when it got there, just giving you a heads up." "Thanks, Jimmy. Will you be home all day?" "Yep, I'll be around. Could you give me a ring when the car leaves, if it's not too much trouble?" "Of course, I'll keep you posted." We bid farewell, and doubts flooded my mind once more. 5 hours later, the phone rang. "Mark, the car's pulling out." 2 guys got in. I thanked Jimmy and hung up. Now there were no doubts left. My 2 buddies were visiting my wife when I wasn't around. Initially, I thought it was just Tom, but now I realized Eric was in on it too. Initially, I tried to reassure myself, thinking maybe they were planning a surprise for my birthday. However, my birthday was still a distant 4 months away. Was it too soon for a surprise? To ease my mind, I reached out to an acquaintance for a favor, a couple of video cameras and a listening device. After work, I collected the gear, fabricating a reason when questioned. As I drove home, my hands trembled. I felt a pain of guilt for spying on my wife. I was so convinced she'd never betray me. Arriving home, Sarah welcomed me warmly. We enjoyed a delightful meal and retired to bed for another intimate encounter. Throughout, I didn't detect anything amiss. Typically, a woman's demeanor changes if she's cheating, but Sarah seemed her usual self, if not better. The next morning, Sarah prepared for a video shoot, and I tagged along. In the backseat of my car sat the forgotten cameras. During the journey, Sarah inquired about them. "What's in the bag, hon?" "Just some work stuff I needed to dispose of." "I'll take care of it later," I replied, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While Sarah was at work, I headed home. Time slipped away, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed, yet all the cameras were up, 1 in the bedroom, another in the living room, a 3rd in the kitchen, and the 4th outside. It slipped my mind that I was meant to pick up Sarah. Stepping outside, I spotted a white Ford pulling in with Sarah and Tom stepping out. "I called you 20 times. Where did you disappear to, Mark?" Sarah exclaimed. Checking my phone, indeed there were 20 missed calls from her. I apologized, but Sarah just walked past me without a word. Then Tom approached. "You really messed up, man." I had to handle things myself. "Sorry, got held up, had to fix something urgent." "No worries, I got your back, considering how many times you've helped me out." After exchanging farewells, I returned indoors. The evening passed in tense silence. Sarah was still upset with me for not picking her up, so I tried to apologize. "You said you'd pick me up. Why didn't you come?" "There was a sudden rush job. Please forgive me. I won't let it happen again." We hugged and headed to bed. I felt ashamed for doubting her. I couldn't shake off the feeling that Jimmy, the old neighbor, might have been imagining things, but with the photos he provided, I had to confirm everything firsthand. While Sarah slept soundly at night, I made the decision to unlock her phone and sift through her messages. To my relief, I found nothing suspicious. Her phone was clean. With a clear conscience, I drifted off to sleep. 2 weeks flew by since I installed cameras throughout the house. While I toiled away at work, I kept a watchful eye on Sarah's activities at home. Everything appeared normal, devoid of any hint of wrongdoing. Despite the initial clean bill on her phone, I felt compelled to check Sarah's messages a couple more times. Each time, the result was the same: no signs of infidelity or inappropriate exchanges with my pals. Life continued on its peaceful trajectory. Tom and Eric joined us for quality hangouts. We explored the city's delights, and Sarah juggled work with our outings. During one shift at work, I decided to peek at the cameras once more. Albeit with a sense of weariness, I couldn't shake off the feeling of futility. Each time, my suspicions yielded nothing. But then a new worry emerged. What if Sarah discovers the cameras and feels like I don't trust her? As I pondered, I glanced at the monitor and saw Sarah opening the door. It caught me off guard. Switching to the outdoor camera, I spotted a white Ford parked nearby. Tom and Eric stood on the porch, greeted warmly by Sarah before they stepped inside. I disconnected the listening device tucked beneath the living room's coffee table. Sarah headed upstairs to the bedroom while Tom and Eric kicked back on the couch, their bare torsos exposed. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, I watched as Sarah retrieved a sultry costume from the wardrobe, the same one she'd worn for me the night before. My eyes remained glued to the scene unfolding before me, and in that moment, I made a decision about what to do with them. It was time to rid myself of the trash. Quite literally. I reached out to someone with an untraceable number, let's call him Mr. Keller, known for discreetly handling such matters. Trembling, I recounted the entire situation to Mr. Keller over the phone, my grip slipping on the device. Got it. We'll be ready at the drop-off point. Once payment's made, the car will head your way to collect the garbage. The conversation was brief, but the cost for such a service wasn't cheap. I needed to act fast to get to the payment spot. Thankfully, I had enough cash stashed in my car for the job. As I checked the cameras, I saw my wife already engaged in intimate acts with my friends. The nausea hit me hard. If I hadn't found out, I would have come home later and kissed her. I drove recklessly, consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. My entire body shook, and I felt like I might pass out. The hurt was overwhelming, and a tear escaped my eye. How could my childhood friends and my wife betray me like this? It was beyond comprehension. I swiftly reached the designated spot, an old abandoned building. I had to leave an envelope, so I tucked it under a stone and sent a coded message, eggs laid. Almost instantly, I got a reply, my chicks flew out of the nest. Hurrying back home, I parked nearby and observed from a distance. Checking my phone, Jimmy called to alert me about the white Ford near my house, but I assured him everything was fine. Switching on the cameras, I witnessed two men indulging with my wife on our leather couch. It felt like watching an adult movie, stinging yet comforting in the hope of impending justice. Within 10 minutes of my return, a white van pulled up. 3 burly men, clad in black and masked, stormed into my house with swift precision. One knocked out Tom, another subdued Eric, and the third silenced Sarah. They were bound, blindfolded, and swiftly whisked away in the van, which sped off. I watched in awe of their efficiency, the entire operation lasting about 40 seconds. All I could do now was wait for the outcome. In a few days, I checked with my neighbor, who fortunately saw nothing. Returning to work on my evening commute home, I contacted the police, reporting my wife missing. Prior to that, I had disposed of and destroyed the phones belonging to Sarah and my friends, rendering them untraceable. The following day, a tow truck hauled away the white Ford parked at my house. I notified the police, sticking to my story that I returned home to find my wife missing with no clues in sight. Surprisingly, all neighbors confirmed seeing the white Ford near my place when I wasn't around. It wasn't just Jimmy who spotted it. Since the car was registered under Tom's name, he landed in the hot seat as the main suspect. Initially, I too was eyed with suspicion. However, when they checked with my workplace, they learned I hadn't left on the day of the disappearance. Meanwhile, as the investigation unfolded, I diligently backed up all camera recordings onto a disk and stashed it away securely. 4 days later, an anonymous video arrived revealing 3 bodies being dropped off at a remote location. The footage showed them being dragged out of a van, bound and helpless in an empty field. They cried and begged for mercy, which I found oddly satisfying to watch. Since my sole condition was that no harm should come to anyone, they were left in the desert with their hands untied, instructed to remain still for an hour. After that, the van departed, leaving their fate entirely in their own hands. They were transported in a van from Nevada to Texas, and by then I didn't care if they returned alive or not. A month later, the case hit a dead end, with the detective suggesting my wife likely ran off with Tom, having some sort of affair. I bought into his theory. Eric wasn't on anyone's radar since he had no family or girlfriend, and their business venture had crumbled with no one tending to it for a month. I didn't pursue a divorce to avoid drawing suspicion. Instead, I hired a lawyer, initiating the process. If Sarah didn't come home within a couple of months, we could file for divorce, citing her disappearance. A month later, I was summoned to the police station for identification. They presented me with a photo featuring 2 men and a woman. Initially, I didn't recognize my wife and 2 friends. They looked like they'd aged 2 decades overnight, which I found somewhat amusing. They appeared in ragged, tattered clothes, emaciated, and overall in a sorry state. I identified all 3 and inquired about their whereabouts. The investigator informed me that in Texas, a pair of naked crazies had robbed a gas station, stole a car, and made off in an unknown direction. Within 24 hours, the car was found abandoned on the roadside. They had chosen a vehicle without fuel, limiting their getaway. They were apprehended and are currently serving time behind bars. By then, thinking, well, at least they are alive, this wasn't the outcome I anticipated. I expected them to have the sense to return home unscathed. Instead, in a moment of desperation, they resorted to crime. It horrified me to realize these were people I'd spent a significant part of my life with, yet I felt no sympathy for them. Honestly, who could pity them? I managed to secure a divorce. It wasn't a walk in the park, but I pulled it off, officially gaining my freedom. I made a trip to Texas once to confront each of them who betrayed me face to face. They all seemed completely out of it, but what struck me was that none of them suspected my involvement. None of them even considered it could be payback for their betrayal. It saddened me a bit that they didn't grasp the magnitude of their wrongdoing against me. I was content to stay in the shadows, but as I looked at them, they seemed like strangers to me, lost souls. When I directly asked Sarah if she had betrayed me, she simply whispered, "Never." I smiled and walked away. I half expected a fight. I thought they'd return home and realize I was the one who sent them to the desert, yet they proved to be so weak, so foolish, that they dug themselves into an even deeper pit. I merely gave them a chance to reveal their true colors under pressure, but they chose cowardice in crime instead. I can't say how I would have acted in their shoes, but I'll say this much, I wouldn't have ended up in such a predicament. I value those around me and always uphold honesty, but if someone wrongs me, I won't hesitate to take action. Recently, I relocated to Florida with plans to stay for at least a year. Whether I find a girlfriend or not doesn't bother me much. I've grown more relaxed about life. Financially, I'm set for a comfortable future without denying myself anything. I pride myself on being smart and cautious, always striving to grow and hoping my story inspires others to make the right choices, regardless of their circumstances. Remember, when life throws you garbage, grab a rake and clean up. Garbage belongs in the trash, not in your life. Thanks for listening to my story. That's the end of it, all right. That was a fun story. Now, let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. I'm Ryan, a man known for my loving nature and gentle demeanor, always ready to give my wife everything she desires. It took me 2 marriages to learn this lesson: being overly accommodating and fulfilling every whim of your beloved can breed contempt and disrespect. That's a mistake I won't repeat. These pampered women think they can deceive their partners as long as they are not caught, believing everything's fine. They conceal their guilt in various ways until they are exposed, then suddenly express regret, claiming they never intended to hurt their spouse. Do they even hear themselves? What are we to make of their claims? Do they realize they are confessing to deceit and only regret getting caught? It's a blatant insult. I'm convinced these women lack basic understanding. Sandy and I crossed paths after both escaping dysfunctional relationships. She had spent 3 years with her boyfriend Billy, who left her for someone younger and more attractive. Sandy was left feeling resentful and with low self-esteem after being abandoned by the man she loved. Her unresolved feelings for Billy always bothered me on some level. I'm Ryan, 6 years older than Sandy. I was previously married to a stunning woman, Charlotte, whom I adored. However, she betrayed me by having multiple affairs behind my back during a time when I was completely enamored with her. It took me a year to uncover her infidelity, which deeply wounded me. After leaving her, I vowed never to allow such betrayal again. This experience made me realize that trust would be a challenge in any new relationship. Sandy and I were aware of each other's baggage from the start. I helped Sandy boost her self-esteem, encouraging her to hit the gym and sculpt her body into a stunning figure. She dedicated her free time to shopping for new clothes, pampering herself at the salon, and playing tennis. With my unwavering support, she blossomed into a confident, radiant woman. In return, knowing my past struggles, Sandy worked tirelessly to help me overcome my trust issues. She consistently reassured me that I was her one and only love, expressing gratitude for having me in her life each day. She showered me with declarations of love and ensured my every desire was met. Our intimacy remained strong, with passionate encounters occurring at least 4 times a week. We continued to share tender moments on the couch and talked about starting a family. We felt like soulmates and life seemed perfect, or so I believed. However, a week after our 6th anniversary, my world was rocked. I noticed Sandy wearing a stunning dress I hadn't seen before, an odd choice for a casual weekday morning. Though I don't typically spy on my wife, we have home video surveillance that I occasionally check when bored at work. Usually, I enjoy watching our dog Brandy, a source of comfort after my stressful job. But that morning, seeing Sandy dressed to the nines piqued my curiosity. She looked breathtaking in a short red dress and sky-high heels, her hair and makeup flawlessly done. It was a sight that both captivated and unsettled me, filling me with an uneasy feeling. I immediately dialed my wife's number, eager to know what she was up to. "Hey, sweetheart. I was just thinking about you. How's your day going? Tennis plans? Hey, love. I miss you too. No tennis today. Kara sprained her ankle, so I decided to take the day off. Ah, that's a shame. I know how much you enjoy playing. Any other plans? Not really, haven't figured it out yet. Maybe hit the gym. Wanna grab lunch? I can swing by and pick you up. That's sweet, but not today. Feeling a bit bloated and not hungry. Just gonna grab a protein shake at the gym. See you tonight. Love you, babe." I ended the call without my usual "I love you." She probably noticed since I always say it before hanging up. She deceived me, and I'm determined to uncover the truth behind her lies. Despite years of trust in Sandy, I still had a GPS tracker in her car, a relic from the past meant for safety but now used for spying on my wife. After ending the call, I left my office and activated the tracker in my car. Sandy was headed downtown, and I followed suit. My office wasn't far from the city center, and within 15 minutes, I caught up with her as she entered a garage parking outside. I waited anxiously for her emergence. 5 minutes later, there she was, my stunning wife in her heels and a short dress, making her way to Fellini, an upscale restaurant. My stomach turned with apprehension, hoping I wouldn't be betrayed again. As I watched her wave to a man outside the restaurant, my fears were confirmed. Moving closer, I saw them exchange a kiss, their intimate conversation signaling trouble. Sneaking across the street, I peeked through the window, witnessing their affectionate embrace as they waited to be seated. Sandy leaned tenderly against his shoulder, leaving me feeling utterly betrayed. Tears welled up in my eyes, but soon anger surged within me. Wiping away my tears, I grabbed my phone and snapped pictures through the window. As I lowered the phone, I witnessed him turn to Sandy and embrace her in a passionate kiss. My heart shattered as I captured the moment. She responded to his kiss, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him closer. In that instant, I switched on the video camera, documenting their intimate embrace. A mixture of heartache and fury consumed me, driving me towards a dark path. Before I could make a decision, the hostess escorted them to their table. My blood boiled when I recognized the man, Billy, Sandy's ex-boyfriend who had shattered her life. Now she was back in his arms. Sandy knew my feelings towards him, and I had made it clear she should never speak to him again. Clearly, she disregarded my wishes. Anger overwhelmed me as I realized she had lied to me, dressed up to meet him, shared a passionate kiss, and spent the entire day with him, all within the past hour. This level of disrespect and humiliation was intolerable, and I couldn't bear it any longer. The promise I made to myself after my previous marriage kept me from tolerating such disrespect. It was over, and all that awaited were more lies and excuses from my soon-to-be ex-wife. Fueled by anger, I returned to the office and spent the rest of the day at my desk, trying to understand how this could happen again. Feeling sorry for myself for the next 5 hours, I headed home, already planning my next move. I wondered if Sandy would confess the truth about her day or persist in deceiving me, which would make my next step easier. Despite my anger, I managed to suppress it and drove home to confront the end of my marriage. As I pulled into the driveway, tears welled up as I mourned the loss of the woman I once loved and respected. Inside, Sandy was setting a delightful dinner on the table, dressed in a charming outfit and showering me with affection. As I entered the kitchen, she kissed me passionately and expressed how much she missed me. It felt like typical cheating wife behavior, trying to alleviate her guilt and compensate for the past 6 months of neglect. No matter how hard I tried to appear normal, it was obvious that my efforts failed when she looked at me and asked, "Honey, are you okay? Has something happened?" I poured myself a tall glass of Mr. Daniels, attempted to smile and relax, and replied, "It's okay, it's just been a busy day. Let me get dressed and tidy up for dinner, and I'll be down soon." In the bedroom, I changed my clothes, sat on the bed, and finished my drink, feeling the elixir soothe my body. Heading downstairs, I entered the kitchen to find my beautiful wife cheerful and setting the table for dinner. She seemed content, clearly pleased with the day she spent with her boyfriend. As we sat together, I initiated a conversation. "Sandy, this dinner is wonderful and you look stunning today." "Thank you. I love you, honey, and I enjoy cooking for you," she said with a satisfied smile. We sat in uneasy silence while eating, and I noticed Sandy glancing at me, perhaps sensing something was wrong. Was she feeling guilty? Would she confess the truth about today? I awaited answers in the next few minutes. "So, tell me about your day and what you did for lunch," I asked, my tone devoid of any threat. "Well, after your call, I hit the gym for a few hours, grabbed a protein bar, and then came home to whip up dinner for you." "It's been pretty dull," she replied. Seeing my teary-eyed expression, she averted her gaze and focused on her plate. In a hushed tone, I continued, "So, Sandy, how are we going to handle this? Are we going straight to lawyers, or do you want to see a therapist first?" "What do you mean, honey?" "About the divorce, of course," I clarified. "Don't be ridiculous." "What divorce?" she retorted. "I mean the end of our marriage, separation, figuring out how to move forward and still remain amicable," I explained. "I don't understand. Why would you want a divorce?" "Seriously," she asked, puzzled. "I'll give you some time to ponder that question before I respond." Suddenly, she seemed flustered, her hands fidgeting with her glass, and she avoided making eye contact with me. Several minutes passed in silence. "No," I fibbed, feeling a pang of guilt, though it hardly mattered. For some reason, I didn't want her to know the truth. "Why are you asking if I've been keeping tabs on you? Is there something I should be aware of?" she inquired. She seemed perplexed, at a loss for words, typical of deceivers denying their actions. As anticipated, she insisted that nothing untoward was going on and professed her confusion. "Why are you bringing up divorce?" she questioned. With a heavy heart, I gazed into her eyes, hoping she'd open up and confess. After a prolonged silence, I sighed. "Well, let me show you what's troubling me, Sandy." I unlocked my phone and displayed a photo of her and Billy sharing a kiss outside the restaurant. Though it could be misconstrued as a friendly gesture, I withheld any further images until I heard her explanation for her deceit. Her jaw dropped, tears welling in her eyes. Predictably, she scrambled for excuses. "Honey, let me explain. It was just a friendly greeting, nothing more. Where did you even find this photo? So, how's Billy doing these days, sweetheart?" "I'll explain how I got this picture. I was leaving the software store, crossing the street, when I thought I saw you walking into the restaurant, hand in hand with someone. I dashed across the street and peeked through the window. There you were, and he had his arm around you. At first, I doubted it was you, but I was mistaken. It was indeed you. Then I wondered why you were dressed so attractively in that short dress and high heels. You never dress like that for me anymore. That's when I saw you with Billy and everything clicked. I snapped some photos right when you leaned in to kiss him. That's how I got this picture. In the next photo, you had your arms wrapped around his neck and your short dress was hiked up, leaving your behind exposed. You looked stunning in that dress, with your hair and makeup done so perfectly. Were you off to a modeling gig or auditioning for a role as a racetrack girl? Tell me, why dress like that for him? I can't recall the last time you dressed so attractively for me. She buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks while I waited for her response, staring at her intently. When she remained silent, I pressed on. You know, my new S22 phone has an incredible camera. It can zoom in with such clarity. Let me show you. I said, moving closer to her arm wrapped around Billy's neck. I zoomed in on her ring finger, now bare of any wedding bands, and held the image up to her. No wedding rings today. That's strange. I can't recall you ever taking them off in all the time we've been together. Today must have been quite special. Do you understand now why I'm talking about divorce? You lied to me this morning about your day. You removed your wedding rings, dolled up like a woman of ill repute to meet your old flame, and then lied to me again just a few minutes ago. You're here, sitting in front of me, feeding me lies, I exclaimed, frustration seeping into my voice. Can you explain why I dressed up like that for him without my wedding rings? Can you explain why we held hands and kissed? Can you explain why I kept lying to you? Tell me, darling, does any of this mean anything to you? Because if it were the other way around, I'm sure you'd feel differently. Ryan, I get that it looks terrible, but I took off my rings while painting my nails. I forgot to put them back on when I realized I was running late. It's a lame excuse and I can't justify it, but I swear I didn't try to hide them. He knows we're married. He knows you're married, yet he still wants to see you, to publicly kiss you, and you went along with it all. That's not a convincing excuse. She added, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. I'm at a loss for words, Ryan. It was just lunch with a friend, and I just wanted to look nice. Well, it doesn't matter now. You lied and met him. Do you think I'm a fool? This meeting had to be planned, and you kept it from me without even mentioning it. When I saw you kissing like that, it was obvious you wanted more than I could offer. Ryan, sweetheart, we can't end our marriage over this. Nothing happened. He was in town and invited me to lunch. I know I shouldn't have gone, and I know how jealous you can be, but we've been together for so long. I thought catching up with him after all these years wouldn't be a big deal. I dressed up to show him what he missed out on when he left me. I wanted to confront him about how he hurt me and show him how happy I am now. It still hurts to think about how he abandoned me, and I wanted a bit of closure. Yes, I kissed him, but it wasn't romantic. It was like two old friends meeting or saying goodbye. You have to believe me. I want nothing to do with him. Please, baby, let's move past this. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Really, doesn't that mean anything? When Sandy heard the chance to salvage our marriage, she smiled, eager to know what steps to take. Yes, of course. I'll do whatever you want, baby, she assured. Okay, Sandy. I'll give you one chance, just one. I have a single request, let me see your cell phone. Why? She looked at me, puzzled. Well, Sandy, if it means nothing, then give me your phone. I want to check if there are any messages to him and what you two have been talking about. No, you don't need to see this, she said, her gaze falling to the floor. She knew that reading the messages would hurt me and reveal things she didn't want me to know. That's what I thought. So let's go back to my original question, how do we want to handle this? Her tears flowed as she begged for forgiveness, promising never to repeat her actions. It stirred up painful memories of my first marriage. I couldn't believe I was facing this nightmare again. This time, I wouldn't fall for these lies and let it continue. Wait, please wait, Ryan. If I hand you the phone, will you promise to give me one more chance? You must understand that I love you and have never been unfaithful before. I admit I got caught up in a foolish online relationship, even with my ex-lover, but it was foolishness, acting like a silly teenager. The flattery and compliments were tempting, stroking my ego. I know how immature that sounds. If I give you the phone, you have to promise me another chance. I can't do that, Sandy, but I promise you if you refuse to give me the phone, it's over between us. My next move will be to call Mark Wilson, the lawyer I've already spoken to, and have him file the divorce papers this week. She knew she had no other option. Fully aware of what I would find on her phone, there were romantic messages from the past 2 months. All she could hope for now was that I understood it was a foolish emotional error and that she was still wholly committed to me. She believed that since there was no physical intimacy involved, I would comprehend and forgive her. She believed she should have made it crystal clear that she never had any physical interaction with him or anyone else. As I opened the messaging app, I found Sandy in tears, her head in her hands, softly murmuring, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for being foolish and stupid. I love you, Ryan, and there's no one else." However, the text messages painted a different picture. The ones that hit me hardest were from Sandy to Billy. "I still love you," cut like a knife, followed by "I've missed you," fueling my anger. The rest seemed predictable, reminiscing about the past and longing to be together. But the final few messages struck me like a thunderbolt. Sandy lamented her marriage was dull, and Billy expressed eagerness to reunite, longing for her figure. It pained me deeply, almost to the point of screaming. However, her response, featuring a suggestive photo with the caption, "My little kitty can't wait," disgusted me. Slamming the phone shut in revulsion, I tossed it onto the table. "Well, it really opened my eyes, Sandy. Eventually, I'll forgive you, but I can't stay married to someone I can't trust. Your actions have shown me that trust is out of the question. What I just read is exactly what I feared, and I refuse to live with it. Maybe your boyfriend can add some excitement to your life now that he knows what has been missing. Sandy, I'll miss you, but I'm going to find a woman who respects me and doesn't hide behind lies and secrets. Ryan, what can I do to prove my love and change your mind? That's the issue, baby. If you could tell me about your meeting with your ex after you got home, it would be different, but I already know you wouldn't have. Trust, loyalty, and honesty mean everything to me, and you broke them all without hesitation. You knew my past and still went ahead without considering us. If you had called me, I wouldn't have been thrilled, but I would have understood. Now I have to wonder if this has happened before. If we stayed together, I'd always question your honesty. What do you do when I'm not around? Are you with him or someone else? I can't spend my days with these doubts, and it's not fair to either of us. How can I forget how easily you lied? Yes, kissing him and dressing up for him is hurtful, the absence of your wedding rings is painful, but lying and deceit are intolerable. One thing is certain, I won't live like this anymore. Ryan, you're spot on, and I messed up big time. I lied because I knew you'd be upset, but I felt like I had no other choice. Even though it was a mistake, I felt I needed a way to calm things down. I figured one lunch would be harmless revenge, but now I realize how wrong I was, and I'm truly sorry. I'd never intentionally hurt you. Can we try to fix this? I want to be as open and honest as you are. My problem is I never want to hurt anyone and try to avoid it if possible. Now I see that being dishonest only makes things worse. Well, honesty and openness are the only things that can salvage our marriage, but you weren't forthcoming until you had no other option but to come clean. Refusing to let me see your text messages until you had no choice pretty much sealed your fate. Tears streamed down her face as she sat there, realizing how these messages exposed her deceit and shattered trust. She knew I wouldn't tolerate it and eventually grasped that her emotional affair was just as damaging as a physical one. She vowed never to repeat that mistake. Sadly, our once joyful marriage came to an end. 3 months later, we finalized the divorce, selling the house and dividing our assets amicably. There was no reconciliation, no revenge, no bitterness, only the remnants of a once blissful union destroyed by lies, betrayal, and shattered trust. I ventured back into the dating scene, but after being burned twice, marriage wasn't in my future plans. Meanwhile, Sandy and Billy ended up sleeping together, and soon after, Sandy discovered she was pregnant. However, Billy abandoned her upon hearing the news, insisting he wasn't ready for fatherhood. The next day, he vanished, leaving Sandy alone with their child. According to her sister Debbie, Sandy was a mere shadow of her former self, her self-esteem shattered once more. Sandy spiraled into deep depression following the tragic loss of her baby, a consequence of a harrowing fall down a lengthy staircase in her apartment. Her once blissful life had abruptly turned into a nightmare, all because of her vanity and self-centeredness. She struggled to forgive herself for wrecking our once joyful marriage and forfeiting my love and respect. Trust, loyalty, respect, mess up one, and you forfeit them all.